Hey guys, tonight we dive into medieval life. Picture it, the cool, almost hypnotic scent of lavender filling the air around you, its purple flowers gently swaying in the breeze. You're in a cloister, a peaceful, secluded space where nuns tend to the earth, their simple habits blending seamlessly with the natural world. It's here, in this serene corner of the monastery, where the lavender grows. But why? Why did these women, devoted to prayer and service, cultivate this particular herb in their sacred gardens? You probably won't survive this. Lavender isn't just a nice fragrance, it holds far more power than you might think. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is there. I love seeing where my listeners are located, it's always fascinating. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The answer to why medieval nuns grew lavender is far more than just, they liked it. Lavender wasn't just a common herb, it was a symbol, a powerful tool in the nuns' daily lives. Imagine the kind of life they lived, surrounded by stone walls, devoted to their prayers, and far removed from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. But within the cloisters, lavender thrived, and so did its many uses. It wasn't just about fragrance, it was about health, holiness, and healing. In medieval times, life could be brutal, and the nuns weren't exempt from the physical and mental strains that accompanied their lives. From long hours of prayer to the harsh conditions they endured in often poorly maintained structures, the health of the nuns was constantly in jeopardy. Lavender, then, became more than a mere decorative plant. It was their pharmacy, their remedy for ailments both of the body and of the spirit. Lavender's healing properties were well known. Historically, it was used to treat a wide range of ailments, from headaches to anxiety, and it was often employed in treatments for insomnia. It helped calm the nerves, soothe the body, and cleanse the mind. But lavender wasn't just a medicinal plant, it was also an integral part of their religious and spiritual practices. Its pleasant scent was thought to purify spaces, making it ideal for use in the quiet corners of a monastery. Historians still argue whether lavender was as widely available to nuns as other herbs in monastic gardens. While some insist that lavender was carefully cultivated in the most luxurious monasteries, others argue that it was reserved only for those monasteries with access to wealthier patrons or more fertile land. Wherever it grew, though, lavender became synonymous with serenity, healing, and purity. As you continue walking through the cloistered garden, the sound of distant chanting reverberates softly, merging with the earthy aroma of lavender that lingers in the air. It's in this peaceful, almost timeless space that you begin to see the immense significance of the herb. Lavender was more than just a useful plant, it was sacred. This small, vibrant purple flower had a role to play in both the spiritual and physical lives of the nuns who grew it. You might think it was just another item on their long list of tasks, but it was far more than that. Lavender was essential to their lives in ways that went beyond what we could imagine. These nuns lived in cloisters, spaces designed for privacy and prayer, away from the noise and distractions of the world. The cloister itself was a sacred space, a symbol of isolation and devotion. It was here that the nuns grew not only the essential plants they needed for medicine but also the herbs they used to create a spiritual atmosphere. Lavender was often used in the monastic lifestyle, not only for its healing qualities but also for its connection to purity and chastity. The scent was thought to cleanse both the environment and the mind. In these cloisters, the nuns found more than just comfort. They found a kind of solace and peace in their gardens. Lavender, with its delicate flowers and calming fragrance, became intertwined with their spiritual life. You can almost picture the nuns, their simple habits flowing as they tend to their gardens, the soft purple flowers swaying in the breeze, a quiet reminder of their commitment to both healing and prayer. As you observe this, you can almost hear the quiet hum of their work, the rustle of leaves in the wind. While the outside world raged with wars, plagues, and social unrest, the nuns maintained their sacred, ordered life within the cloister walls. And at the heart of this life was lavender, grounding them with its fragrance, its medicinal qualities, and its connection to the divine. Lavender was used not just to treat illnesses but to uplift the spirit. It was a plant that connected both body and soul. Imagine a nun, exhausted after a day of prayer and labor, taking a moment to inhale deeply the lavender-scented air in her cloister garden. The calmness it provided wasn't merely physical, it also helped to center her spiritually, calming her mind, bringing peace to her heart. As simple as it sounds, it's easy to see how such an effect could be a lifeline in a world so full of hardships. Historians still argue whether the use of lavender in these religious spaces was as widespread as some claim. While we know that some monastic orders specialized in herbalism, others may have had more limited access to such plants. However, the nuns' devotion to their gardens and the medicinal herbs they grew is undeniable. These herbs weren't just for their health, they were a symbol of their commitment to the spiritual well-being of both themselves and the community around them. Now, imagine yourself walking further into the garden, the cobblestones cold beneath your feet as you pass rows of carefully tended plants, each one with a purpose. The lavender here is thriving, its bright purple flowers a stark contrast to the muted stone walls of the cloister. The scent is almost intoxicating, but there's more to this herb than just a pretty flower. Lavender, in the medieval world, wasn't merely ornamental, it was practical, revered for its healing properties and symbolic meaning. Nuns weren't just growing it for the pleasure of the senses, but for the health and well-being of their entire community. These medieval nuns were, in essence, some of the first herbalists, practicing a form of medicine that was deeply intertwined with their faith. Many of them weren't just caring for their own health, they were responsible for treating the sick, the infirm, and the poor in the surrounding communities. Medicine in the medieval period was primitive at best, and herbal remedies were often the only form of care available. Lavender was used in everything from poultices to balms to concoctions designed to soothe the body and mind. It was thought to ease headaches, calm anxiety, and even assist in the treatment of various skin conditions. But beyond its practical uses, lavender was also a spiritual symbol. In the medieval period, lavender's purple color was associated with the divine. Purple was the color of royalty, of saints, of holy figures. Lavender's presence in the monastery garden was not just a sign of its usefulness but also a reminder of its connection to the sacred. It was more than an herb, it was an offering, a prayer, and a constant symbol of devotion. Imagine a nun tending her lavender plants in the morning light, her fingers brushing against the soft, fragrant leaves. Every act of care she bestowed on these plants was an act of devotion to her faith and her calling. And then there's the subtle way lavender's scent could have influenced the daily lives of these nuns. You might think it's just a nice smell, but the calming effect lavender had on the mind was actually critical in the intense, contemplative life of a nun. With so much focus on prayer and spiritual study, maintaining mental clarity was key. The smell of lavender was thought to help clear the mind, bringing peace to thoughts that might otherwise race or wander. It was as though the lavender's fragrance was a silent partner in their devotion, reminding them of their higher purpose. Historians still argue whether lavender was used in the exact same way across all monasteries. Some suggest that in wealthier, larger monastic communities, lavender was grown in abundance, while others believe that smaller, less fortunate orders might have struggled to cultivate such a delicate herb. But whether lavender was plentiful or scarce, its presence in the cloister garden speaks volumes about the role of nuns in both spiritual and practical matters. Their knowledge of plants and their healing powers wasn't just a matter of survival, it was a matter of faith. It was an offering, a way of intertwining the sacred and the practical, creating a bond between nature, health, and the divine. Picture the nuns, dressed in their simple, humble habits, moving gracefully through the cloister. The lavender in their gardens grows in abundance, nurtured by their care, but it also serves a purpose far beyond what we might think of today. For these women, lavender was not just a remedy for common ailments, it was a spiritual companion. With each plant they tended, they were reminding themselves of their sacred duties, tending not just to the earth, but to the divine presence they sought to foster in their daily lives. Lavender was an essential part of the healing practice that permeated the medieval monastic life. But these nuns weren't just caring for their own bodies, they were caretakers for the community around them. You see, monasteries often served as centers of both faith and medicine during medieval times. It was not uncommon for villagers to seek out the help of nuns, especially if they were suffering from ailments or seeking comfort in times of illness or distress. And, while the church wasn't quite a hospital in the modern sense, it was often the first place people turned to in their times of need. Lavender's calming properties made it especially useful in times of distress, whether it was the stress of daily life, the trauma of a loved one's death, or even the threat of war and plague that seemed ever looming. Lavender was used in soothing teas, mixed into oils, and placed in sachets, all intended to calm nerves and ease the soul. Imagine a nun, her hands moving deftly to prepare lavender in a small linen pouch, ready to pass it on to someone seeking solace. The scent of lavender, carried in the air, was meant to heal, to comfort, and to remind the weary of the divine presence surrounding them. This was also a time when the medical knowledge we take for granted today didn't exist. The medieval nuns weren't practicing science as we know it, they were working with what nature had provided, combining intuition, prayer, and knowledge passed down through generations. Lavender, which was grown with such care in the cloister gardens, was their ally in that work. It was a tool to restore health, to ease suffering, and to maintain a sense of inner peace, whether for the nuns themselves or the community they served. Historians still argue whether these early herbalists truly had access to all the remedies they are credited with using. Some believe that lavender, among other herbs, was considered a luxury, cultivated only in the more prosperous abbeys. Others argue that all nuns, regardless of their monastery's wealth, used the plants at their disposal for healing, and lavender may have been a universal presence in these sacred gardens. Either way, the act of cultivating such plants was a deeply spiritual one, as the nuns wove their faith and care for the world into each petal and leaf. As you stand in the quiet of the cloister, you can feel the calming presence of the lavender all around you. But what if I told you there's more to this herb than just healing the body? Lavender, with its soft purple hue and sweet fragrance, also played an important role in protecting the soul. In the medieval world, people believed that plants like lavender weren't just tools for physical ailments, they had the power to ward off evil spirits, bring good fortune, and even protect from disease. For the nuns, lavender was a symbol of spiritual purity, something that could purify their surroundings and their minds. Lavender was also seen as a symbol of chastity and divine love, both essential ideals for the monastic life. The nuns, who had taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, were constantly seeking ways to embody these virtues. The lavender plants in their gardens weren't just functional, they were also a reflection of the life they led. The way the lavender would stand tall, swaying gently in the breeze, was a reminder of their commitment to a life of quiet devotion and purity. Each flower served as a visual cue to the nuns to remain steadfast in their vows, to embody chastity and devotion, and to maintain their connection to the divine. But lavender wasn't just about the spiritual, its medicinal properties were deeply connected to its role as a purifier. Lavender was often used in religious rituals to purify both the space and the people within it. It wasn't uncommon to see lavender laid out during prayer services or used to cleanse the air during moments of intense religious devotion. In some cases, lavender was even burned as incense during Mass or other sacred ceremonies, its fragrance filling the air, acting as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. The act of using lavender in these rituals was as much about the physical act of purification as it was about aligning oneself with the sacred. The medicinal side of lavender is still just as fascinating. The plant was used to treat a variety of ailments, from common colds to wounds, and even more serious conditions like insomnia and anxiety. In the medieval period, the medical knowledge was rudimentary, but herbal remedies were one of the few forms of healing available. Lavender was used in poultices, oils, and teas, each with a different healing purpose. The calming effects of lavender were especially helpful in treating ailments of the mind. In times of great stress or anxiety, be it from disease, war, or the constant threat of plague, lavender's ability to calm and soothe was seen as nothing short of miraculous. Historians still argue whether the medicinal use of lavender in monastic communities was as widespread as it is often portrayed. Some suggest that lavender was reserved for the wealthier monasteries or those with access to more fertile land, while others believe it was a staple in almost every monastic garden, grown with reverence and used by nuns to help those in need. Regardless of its availability, there's no doubt that lavender played a vital role in both the physical and spiritual care of those who lived within the cloistered walls. Now, imagine stepping into a church service, the air thick with incense and the soft murmur of prayers. Along with the familiar sense of burning frankincense and myrrh, you catch a faint but unmistakable fragrance, lavender. In many monastic communities, lavender wasn't only grown for personal use or health benefits, it had a sacred role to play in the liturgical life of the monastery. Lavender, with its rich aroma and purple hue, symbolized purity and divinity, and it was often woven into the fabric of prayer and worship. In this context, lavender was used in several ways. It might be laid across the altar to purify the space before a prayer service, or placed in the nuns' prayer rooms to cleanse their minds as they meditated. In some rituals, the lavender would be burned alongside other herbs to produce a fragrant smoke that was believed to drive away evil spirits and offer divine protection. The act of using lavender in these sacred practices wasn't just about the scent or the symbolism, it was a way to create an atmosphere of spiritual purity and peace. Lavender became more than just a plant, it was an instrument for worship, a way of aligning the physical world with the divine. Consider, too, how lavender was used as an offering. Monasteries were not only places of refuge and prayer but also centers of hospitality. Travelers, pilgrims, and locals often sought shelter in the monasteries, and the nuns would offer them food, rest, and comfort. Lavender was sometimes used to make sachets or small pouches that were gifted to those who came seeking aid. These little lavender sachets, made with care and love, symbolized the monastery's commitment to both spiritual and physical healing. Lavender's calming scent provided a sense of comfort, grounding, and peace for those weary from their travels. Historians still argue whether lavender's use in religious rituals was truly as widespread across all monastic orders as some have suggested. Some sources claim that it was only in the wealthier monasteries or those located in more fertile regions that lavender was cultivated for such ceremonial uses. Others argue that its use was more universal, as it was simple to grow and offered numerous benefits both spiritually and medicinally. Regardless of the level of access, there's little doubt that lavender was deeply integrated into the monastic lifestyle, not only in its practical use but also as a symbol of faith, healing, and protection. Lavender's role in these practices was part of a broader tradition of using plants and herbs in religious and spiritual contexts. In the medieval period, the boundaries between medicine, magic, and religion were often blurred. Plants like lavender, with their healing properties and symbolic meanings, were seen as gifts from God, tools for both physical care and spiritual growth. Lavender, then, was more than just a useful herb, it was a bridge between the sacred and the earthly, a reminder that the divine could be found even in the smallest details of life. The significance of lavender in the medieval world extended far beyond the cloister walls, especially in times of great suffering and crisis. If you step into the medieval era, with its constant threat of plague, war, and famine, you can imagine how essential lavender's role would become. During these dark times, lavender wasn't just a soothing scent or a spiritual symbol, it became a shield, a form of protection against the terrifying realities of life. Lavender, along with other herbs, was believed to have the power to ward off the deadly plagues that swept across Europe. Monks and nuns, who were often among the first to care for the sick, would wear small pouches of lavender, hang it in their rooms, or scatter it around their monasteries in an attempt to ward off the disease. In the face of the Black Death, which ravaged Europe in the 14th century, lavender was used as part of protective rituals. The nuns would fill their cloisters with the fragrance of lavender, believing it would purify the air and protect them from the disease. The herb's strong, antiseptic properties were recognized even then, as it was believed to clean the air of harmful vapors that might carry disease. It wasn't uncommon for people to carry small bundles of lavender with them, wearing it in their pockets or sewing it into their clothing in an attempt to shield themselves from the plague. Some even used lavender as part of their home remedies, brewing it into a tea or adding it to their baths in the hopes of keeping illness at bay. But while lavender may have offered a sense of comfort and protection, it wasn't a cure. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of lavender in the Middle Ages truly helped prevent the plague, or if it was merely a placebo, a form of spiritual reassurance in a time when medicine had few answers. It's true that lavender's antiseptic properties are well documented, and it has since been used in modern medicine as a treatment for a variety of ailments. However, there's no evidence to suggest that it could have offered much protection against a disease as deadly as the plague. Despite this, the use of lavender during the outbreak speaks to the deep connection between spirituality, healing, and the desire to protect oneself from the unknown. The emotional significance of lavender during these crises cannot be overstated. For the nuns, as for the rest of society, the threat of the plague was an ever-present fear. In this context, lavender took on an almost magical quality. It became more than just an herb, it was a symbol of hope, a reminder that, even in the darkest of times, there were small acts of healing and care that could be relied upon. The calming scent of lavender offered solace in an era where fear of the unknown reigned supreme. In the midst of medieval plagues, wars, and the constant threat of death, the nuns' work with lavender was not just about survival, it was about providing comfort in a harsh world. But their role went beyond healing the sick. They also played an essential part in sharing the knowledge of herbs, passing on centuries-old wisdom to the wider community. Nuns were often the keepers of this knowledge, trusted with teaching others about the medicinal uses of plants like lavender. It's not hard to imagine that, in a world where information was passed down through word of mouth and sacred texts, the nuns' teachings became the foundation for the future of herbal medicine. The nuns were often the only literate members of their communities, and their knowledge of herbal remedies was invaluable. They would teach their communities how to grow, harvest, and use herbs like lavender for everything from healing wounds to treating mental illness. As early herbalists, they were responsible for much of the healthcare in the medieval world. It was in the gardens of the cloisters that much of this knowledge was passed on, not only to fellow nuns but to people in the nearby villages who came to them seeking help. Lavender, with its wide range of benefits, was one of the most useful plants in their repertoire. You can almost picture a nun standing at the edge of the garden, her hands working the earth as she explains to a visitor how lavender can soothe an anxious heart or calm a troubled mind. Perhaps she speaks of how the herb helps with sleeplessness, or how it can be made into a fragrant sachet to help purify the air in their homes. It wasn't just about physical healing, it was about the sense of peace that lavender brought into a home, the way it helped calm the mind and bring clarity in times of trouble. The knowledge that lavender could help both body and spirit was an integral part of the nuns' teaching. Historians still argue whether the spread of herbal knowledge among nuns was intentional or merely a byproduct of their isolated lives. Some suggest that the spread of medicinal knowledge was a central part of their mission, while others believe that the sharing of these practices was more incidental, arising naturally as a result of the nuns' daily interactions with their communities. Regardless of the intent, there's no doubt that the nuns played a crucial role in preserving and passing down this knowledge. The gardens of the monasteries, filled with herbs like lavender, became centers of both learning and healing. The influence of nuns in shaping early herbalism is undeniable. Their practices laid the groundwork for the development of modern herbal medicine. Lavender, in particular, was one of the most widely used herbs in their care and continues to be cherished today. The legacy of these early healers lives on in the soothing properties of lavender, a plant that has survived centuries of change but continues to provide comfort and healing. As the centuries passed and the Middle Ages began to fade into the Renaissance, lavender's role within monastic communities evolved but remained deeply connected to the traditions of the past. Nuns, as the original herbalists and caretakers, still cultivated lavender with reverence, but it began to find its way into wider society. The use of lavender was no longer confined solely to the cloister walls. It began to spread beyond the monastery gardens, making its way into the homes and hearts of everyday people. The herbal wisdom that nuns had passed down continued to flourish, with lavender emerging as one of the most popular plants for medicinal and aromatic use. Lavender was now found in kitchens, apothecaries, and even in the homes of wealthy families, where it was often used for its fragrance. It wasn't unusual for people to carry small sachets of lavender to keep their clothes smelling fresh, or to place them under their pillows to promote restful sleep. It was even included in potpourris, offering a calming scent that filled the air and brought a sense of tranquility to the home. The link between lavender and cleanliness also made it an essential addition to homes seeking to purify the air, particularly in a time when hygiene practices were still rudimentary. But it wasn't just about fragrance or cleanliness. Lavender was still deeply connected to health, even in the Renaissance. It was used to treat a variety of ailments, from stomach issues to headaches to anxiety. The medicinal properties of lavender had been well established by this point, and it was no longer seen solely as the domain of the monasteries. Herbalists and common folk alike were using lavender in much the same way nuns had, taking advantage of its versatility and healing powers. The continued use of lavender in society served as a bridge between the spiritual and the physical, just as it had in the monasteries. Historians still argue about whether lavender's use in medieval and Renaissance times had a more profound impact on society than we realize. Some claim that it was the monasteries that were primarily responsible for the widespread use of lavender, while others suggest that its popularity spread more organically, driven by word of mouth and shared experiences. Whatever the case, lavender's journey from sacred garden plant to household remedy is a testament to its lasting impact. It survived centuries of change, from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, adapting and growing in importance as it crossed social boundaries and became a staple of both religious and secular life. It's fascinating to think that what began as a humble herb cultivated by nuns in their peaceful gardens slowly spread its influence across the world. Today, lavender is used not only in aromatherapy and personal care products but in everything from culinary dishes to cleaning products. The legacy of the nuns' gardens, where lavender was grown with care and reverence, continues to live on in modern-day use. Lavender, the simple yet powerful plant, remains a symbol of healing, purity, and devotion, just as it was centuries ago. Now, as you take a moment to reflect on the journey of lavender, from its humble beginnings in the monastic gardens to its widespread use today, it's interesting to consider its role in one last important aspect of medieval life: marriage rituals. You might think of lavender as a symbol of chastity, purity, and spiritual devotion, qualities that wouldn't traditionally be associated with romantic love. But medieval marriage rituals had a unique way of incorporating this plant into one of the most important moments of a person's life. Lavender was used in wedding ceremonies, often incorporated into bridal bouquets or worn as a symbol of purity and fidelity. This association wasn't just about its fragrance but also its deeper meanings. Lavender, with its calming, soothing effects, was thought to bring peace and harmony into the union of two souls. In a time when marriage was often arranged and based on societal duty rather than personal choice, lavender represented a blessing on the couple's union, wishing them both peace and tranquility. The presence of lavender in these ceremonies spoke to a desire for a harmonious marriage, one built on the foundation of divine blessing. You might imagine the bride, dressed in a simple but elegant gown, her hair adorned with a small sprig of lavender as she stands beside her new husband. The lavender symbolizes not just the purity of her vows, but also the peace that is hoped for in their shared future. It was a quiet, almost subtle way to infuse the ritual of marriage with a sense of calm and spiritual harmony. The scent of lavender, soft and steady, was believed to protect the newlyweds from the chaos of the world outside, helping them remain grounded and devoted to each other in the years to come. Historians still argue about how common this use of lavender was in medieval weddings. While it's clear that lavender was an important plant in monastic and herbal traditions, the extent to which it was used in secular ceremonies is less certain. Some believe that lavender was a common feature of weddings, especially among the wealthier classes who could afford to incorporate such symbolism into their ceremonies. Others suggest that it was a rarer practice, confined to the elite or the most devout. However, the idea that lavender was included in wedding rituals speaks to its deep connection with purity, spirituality, and the desire for peaceful relationships, all of which were highly valued during medieval times. Lavender, then, was much more than just a plant. It was an instrument of purity, of devotion, and of protection, whether in the context of healing, spirituality, or marriage. And as it spread from the cloister gardens to the homes and weddings of medieval people, it became a symbol of both physical and emotional well-being, reminding those who used it of the balance between the sacred and the mundane. As the centuries rolled on and the Renaissance gave way to the modern era, lavender's influence continued to evolve, yet its origins in medieval monastic life remained firmly rooted in history. But even as lavender found its way into everyday use, a deeper question remained: was lavender's significance in the medieval world simply a product of its time, or did its legacy continue to influence the way we view healing, nature, and spirituality today? You may not realize it, but the role of lavender in the cloisters of the past still reverberates in modern life, influencing everything from aromatherapy to the wellness industry. In today's world, lavender is one of the most commonly used essential oils, prized for its soothing properties and versatility. It's used in everything from skincare to relaxation treatments, proving that its calming effects are just as relevant now as they were in the medieval period. Lavender has transcended its role as a monastic herb, becoming a global symbol of calm, peace, and healing. But when you stop and think about it, its popularity today is not so different from its use in the Middle Ages. People still seek lavender for comfort, whether in the form of a pillow mist to aid sleep or as part of a calming bath ritual. It's a testament to the enduring power of lavender's medicinal properties. Despite its modern popularity, lavender's symbolic significance has largely remained intact. In the medieval world, lavender was seen as a purifier, a healer, and a spiritual tool. Today, many still use lavender to purify their living spaces, whether through essential oils or candles, believing that it brings a sense of calm and serenity. The modern-day use of lavender to purify the air in homes, spas, and workplaces echoes its medieval role as a purifier of both body and soul. It is as though we, too, seek to recreate the peace that lavender brought to the nuns of the past, who saw it as a way to connect with the divine and maintain a sense of harmony in their lives. Historians still argue whether lavender's continued popularity today is a direct result of its medieval use, or if it is simply the result of cultural memory. Some believe that its continued use is a natural progression from its monastic roots, while others argue that its place in modern wellness is more of a contemporary invention. Regardless of its origins, lavender has remained a beloved and versatile herb. Its continued presence in our homes and our routines speaks to its deep-rooted symbolism and its timeless ability to soothe, heal, and purify. As we continue to use lavender in our modern lives, we're participating in a tradition that spans centuries. Whether you're using lavender for its calming effects, its beauty, or its connection to nature, you are honoring the legacy of the medieval nuns who first nurtured this sacred herb in their cloistered gardens. From the healing gardens of the past to the wellness products of today, lavender's role as a symbol of peace and purity is as relevant as ever. As you continue to reflect on the lasting legacy of lavender, it's fascinating to consider how this humble herb has moved beyond its medieval origins and woven itself into the very fabric of culture. While it began as a plant of divine symbolism and practical utility in monastic communities, lavender gradually found its place in the wider world, becoming a key component of both personal care and everyday life. In many ways, lavender represents a bridge between the past and present, connecting us with the traditions of the medieval world while continuing to serve us in the modern era. Lavender's transition from a medicinal herb in monastic gardens to a common household staple marks a shift in how society views wellness and healing. In the medieval period, knowledge of medicinal plants like lavender was tightly guarded by the clergy. It was seen as a sacred practice, tied to spiritual growth and religious duties. Nuns, often the most educated women in their communities, passed down their knowledge of these herbs, ensuring their continued use in the healing practices of the time. But as lavender began to spread into the homes of everyday people, it took on new meanings and uses. Lavender's evolution from a sacred, spiritual plant to an essential oil used in aromatherapy today speaks to a broader cultural shift. The way we now use lavender in practices like meditation, yoga, or relaxation is deeply rooted in the same desire for peace and healing that nuns sought in their cloisters centuries ago. The calming properties of lavender are as relevant today as they were when it was used to soothe troubled minds in medieval monasteries. This herb has always been a symbol of tranquility and wellness, and its presence in our lives today is a reminder that some things never change, no matter how much the world around us evolves. Historians still argue whether the medicinal properties of lavender were as universally known during medieval times as we believe. Some suggest that only a small portion of the population had access to this knowledge, while others argue that nuns and monks played a crucial role in spreading herbal wisdom. However, what's clear is that the role of lavender in these early centuries helped establish the foundation for modern herbalism. Today, we benefit from centuries of knowledge, passed down through the nuns who tended their gardens with care, passing on their expertise not just in growing plants but in understanding their deep connection to human well-being. While lavender's role in the medieval period was largely focused on the spiritual and medicinal aspects, its modern-day applications go beyond these boundaries. Today, it's common to find lavender in cleaning products, perfumes, and even culinary dishes. The fact that it's still used in so many ways speaks to its versatility and enduring appeal. Lavender, it seems, has a place in every aspect of life, from the sacred to the mundane. Its soothing aroma and medicinal properties continue to enhance our daily routines, just as they did for the nuns centuries ago. As you take one last look at the lavender in the cloister garden, its vibrant purple flowers swaying gently in the breeze, you might wonder, what did the medieval nuns truly leave behind? Beyond their spiritual devotion and their herb-filled gardens, they left a legacy that has shaped the way we view health, wellness, and even our connection to the natural world. Lavender's enduring presence in our lives is a testament to their knowledge, care, and foresight. But even more than that, it speaks to the power of nature itself to heal and nurture, a truth that has remained constant throughout the ages. In a world where modern medicine has advanced in ways unimaginable to the nuns of the medieval period, it's easy to overlook the role plants like lavender played in the past. Yet, the principles they followed, harmony with nature, understanding the healing powers of the earth, and the integration of spirituality into daily life, are still relevant today. Lavender was more than just a plant, it was a means of living in balance with the world around them. This harmony between nature and human well-being is something that resonates with us now, in an era where wellness has become a buzzword but the connection to nature sometimes feels strained. Today, as we use lavender in everything from essential oils to sleep aids, we are engaging in a tradition that the nuns started centuries ago. When you open a bottle of lavender oil, or add it to your pillow at night, you're participating in a ritual that has been passed down through generations. Whether it's for relaxation, a good night's sleep, or even to soothe a headache, lavender's simple yet profound effects continue to enhance our lives. The nuns of the past, who saw lavender as a gift from God, would likely be pleased to see their knowledge still flourishing in today's world. They knew that nature's remedies could provide both physical relief and spiritual comfort. Historians still debate the true origins of lavender's widespread use, with some claiming that its popularity grew naturally as people discovered its benefits, while others suggest that the Church played a key role in preserving and passing on its knowledge. What we do know is that lavender was never just a simple herb. It was a plant with a purpose, a tool for healing, for calming the soul, and for connecting with the divine. And as lavender continues to be an integral part of modern wellness, it remains a powerful symbol of the medieval nuns' enduring legacy. As you leave the garden, the scent of lavender still lingering in your mind, it's clear that this plant has transcended its humble beginnings. From monastic gardens to modern homes, from sacred rituals to simple bedtime routines, lavender has found its place in the hearts and homes of people across the world. The nuns, in their quiet devotion, cultivated not just a plant, but a legacy of healing, peace, and connection to the earth, a legacy that lives on today in every drop of lavender essential oil, in every sprig placed in a bridal bouquet, and in every person seeking calm in the chaos of the modern world. As you reflect on the incredible journey of lavender, from its sacred roots in the cloister gardens to its modern-day applications, you begin to realize how much this simple herb has shaped the way we view the world. In medieval times, lavender was seen as a gift from God, a plant that connected both body and spirit. Today, lavender remains a powerful tool in the wellness world, offering comfort and healing just as it did centuries ago. But what's truly fascinating is the way lavender's significance has remained consistent throughout history. Despite all the changes, the essence of lavender, the peace, the calm, the healing, has never faded. Think about how many different ways we use lavender today. You might not even realize it, but it's everywhere, from the pillows we sleep on to the lotions we rub into our skin. Lavender has become a staple in aromatherapy, and its soothing properties are used to ease everything from stress to sleeplessness. And yet, the nuns of the medieval period, who first cultivated lavender with such care and reverence, would recognize it instantly. In fact, they would probably be surprised by how far lavender has come, how it's not just in the cloistered gardens anymore, but in homes, spas, and stores across the world. The nuns didn't just plant lavender, they nurtured it, cherished it, and believed in its healing powers. They understood that nature could provide the remedies they needed, and they used that knowledge to care for both their own bodies and the people around them. When you use lavender today, whether in a bath, as a pillow mist, or in an essential oil diffuser, you're tapping into a centuries-old tradition of healing and care. You're carrying forward the legacy of the nuns who planted it with love, and the people who passed down the wisdom of how to use it. Historians still debate whether lavender's place in the lives of nuns was as central as it is sometimes portrayed. Some suggest that it was just one of many herbs grown in the gardens, while others believe it held a special place in the healing practices of the time. However, what's clear is that lavender, like many of the plants grown by the nuns, played a crucial role in both their spiritual lives and their health practices. And its legacy continues to shape the way we use plants for healing today. As we move further into an age of technological advancements, it's easy to forget that the nuns' simple, natural remedies are just as valid today as they were hundreds of years ago. The modern world has created an entire industry around wellness, but many of these practices, aromatherapy, herbalism, and holistic healing, are rooted in the traditions of those early caregivers. Lavender, in all its forms, serves as a reminder that the healing power of nature is timeless. It's as though the nuns planted not just an herb, but a way of life, a lifestyle rooted in simplicity, mindfulness, and connection to the earth. As we reach the end of our journey through the lavender-filled cloisters of the medieval past, it's clear that the legacy of this humble herb is much more than just a plant or a soothing scent. Lavender, for all its simplicity, carries with it centuries of history, wisdom, and devotion. It represents not just the care of the body but the nurturing of the spirit, the understanding that peace and healing can come from both nature and faith. And as you sit here, reflecting on everything we've learned about lavender, you realize that its story is far from over. Lavender has persisted through centuries, surviving wars, plagues, and cultural shifts, and its influence continues to grow in modern times. It's a plant that bridges the gap between the medieval world and the present day, between the sacred and the secular, between the natural world and the wellness practices that shape our lives today. Its place in history is secure, not just because of its medicinal properties, but because of its symbolism, of purity, healing, and divine connection. Lavender's presence in our lives, whether it's in our gardens, our homes, or our wellness routines, is a direct link to the past, a reminder of the devotion and care that once filled the gardens of medieval monasteries. And so, as you breathe in the soft, calming scent of lavender, whether from an essential oil diffuser or a sprig tucked into your pillow, you can feel the connection to those medieval nuns, who cultivated the plant with such reverence and care. You realize that, in some small way, you're continuing their work, part of a long tradition of people who have used the natural world to heal, to restore, and to find peace. In a world that's constantly changing, it's comforting to know that something as simple and timeless as lavender can still offer the same solace it did centuries ago. Historians still argue whether lavender's significance was as widespread as it appears today. Some say it was just a common herb in many monasteries, while others argue that it held special, almost sacred, significance in certain orders. Regardless of its status in the historical record, what is certain is that lavender's enduring presence in both monastic life and modern wellness speaks to its timeless appeal. The nuns who first grew it saw its value not just as a plant, but as a bridge between the physical and the divine, a way to heal the body and the soul. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps with a sprig of lavender beside you, think of the centuries of tradition and care that have gone into preserving this plant. In the soft whispers of its fragrance, you're connected to a rich history, a history that, in many ways, continues to live on in every drop of lavender essential oil, every sachet placed in a drawer, and every calming breath you take.